The building that is changing prefab living in 2026 is not new. It is the building that invented prefab living 80 years ago, and it is quietly breaking every rule the industry built after it. Here is the modern prefab market in one sentence. A factory-built modular home now averages around $240,000 before you even buy the land. And here is the steel arch that started it all, a fully finished 30 by 40 Quonset Barndominium averages $45,000 to $60,000. That gap is not a typo. It exists because prefab housing runs on three unwritten rules: how it ships, what it saves, and what you end up owning. And this building breaks all three of them. The third rule is the one that matters most. Breaking it changes what you can actually own. That is where we finish. Let's start with the building. Start with the structure, because everything unusual about its economics traces back to one physical fact. A Quonset is a series of corrugated steel arches bolted together in sequence. Each arch is self-supporting. The corrugated panel is simultaneously the structure, the roof, and the walls, one continuous curve from the foundation on one side over the peak, and down to the foundation on the other. There is no frame underneath it. There are no interior columns and no load-bearing walls anywhere inside. Load runs continuously down the steel into the foundation perimeter, and the interior arrives as one open span. Now look at what ships. The kit is corrugated panels, a single type of nut and bolt, an assembly manual, and a set of state-stamped engineered blueprints. Factory-fabricated components, cut and drilled in a plant, assembled on your site. Read that description again, because it is the literal definition of prefabricated construction. This building does not resemble prefab. It is prefab, arguably the purest form of it on the market. The economics. Kits run $6 to $20 per square foot, depending on gauge, model, and supplier. And the number that matters more, a fully finished 30 by 40 Barndominium with slab, insulation, doors, and interior averages $45,000 to $60,000 in 2026. One sentence of honesty before anything else. The kit is the arch, and the arch is not the building. Everything between the pallet and the finished home is real money, and this video counts all of it. But to understand why this 80-year-old design is changing prefab living now, you have to see something first. It already changed prefab living once. Go back to 1946. The story starts in 1941 at a naval base at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, where the Navy needed a shelter it could ship anywhere and stand up in a day. By 1945, more than 170,000 had been built. Then the war ended, and the second act began, the one almost nobody knows. The country came home to a housing catastrophe. In 1945, Congress instructed the military to hand its surplus buildings to the Federal Housing Administration, specifically to shelter returning veterans. And the veterans came in a flood. Of 16 million, some 7.8 million enrolled in colleges and training on the GI Bill. The campuses had nowhere to put them, so the arches went up everywhere. In July 1946, a surplus sale at Port Hueneme, California, offered 811 huts to veterans. 75% were claimed on the first day by 600 men. The city and the county of Los Angeles took 1,500 huts each for veteran villages. Northwestern erected around 100. At the University of North Carolina, students rented a bed in one for $5 a month. And these were not just bunk shelters. Coe College converted 13 huts into 26 family apartments, each with a living room, a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. Western Kentucky's Veterans Village housed married students until 1976. A preservation historian described it plainly. By the late 1940s, the Quonset hut was as common on American campuses as the columned library. That is the fact the title rests on. Before prefab was an industry with brochures and financing tiers, it was this building housing an entire generation when nothing else could be built fast enough. 80 years later, prefab is an industry with rules. Price the industry first. Here is the modern prefab market, and the first thing to know is that prefab is not one product. It is an umbrella over several, and conflating them is the most expensive mistake a buyer makes. 3 products, 3 price structures. Manufactured homes, built to the federal HUD code, are the affordable end, the USA NTSN. Census Bureau puts the average new manufactured home at $125,200, roughly $85 per square foot. That is the floor of the category. Modular homes are the middle and the mainstream. Base modules run $50 to $100 per square foot. Installed, the finished number climbs to $80 to $160 per square foot, and the national average lands around $240,000 before land. And there is a trap inside that number. The factory quote is only 50 to 70% of the finished cost. The industry even has a name for it, the 60/40 rule, where 40% of your budget is the site work nobody quoted you. Custom modular runs $200,000 to $500,000 all in. Across the whole umbrella, finished prefab spans roughly $80 to $220 per square foot. Now put the steel arch on that same table. A finished 30x40 Barndominium 1,200 square feet at $45,000 to $60,000. That is beneath the average manufactured home in total dollars and a fraction of modular per square foot, while bolting to a permanent foundation that a manufactured home does not. One caveat, kept honest and kept in view. The arch number assumes you self-manage a substantial share of the work. The modular number buys something close to a finished house. That trade money for labor is the entire subject of this video, and I am not going to let you forget it. So, how does a permanent steel building undercut a factory box? 2 rules. Rule 1 of prefab: it ships finished. A modular home leaves the factory as room-sized boxes that travel on oversized flatbed trucks and get lifted into place by crane. That logistics chain is not free delivery alone, runs $5 to $10 per square foot, or $3,000 to $20,000 before the crane crew and the site labor to marry the modules together. The arch ignores that entire chain. The whole kit ships flat on 1 or 2 standard pallets. Freight runs $1,000 to $7,000. No crane on your site, no escort vehicles. No oversized load permits. You are shipping steel sheets, not rooms. Rule 2 of prefab: it saves time, not money. Modular's real advantage is speed. A factory builds in controlled conditions on a fixed schedule, but the finished cost tracks close to site built in a lot of markets. You buy weeks, not dollars. The arch inverts that too by converting your labor into the savings. Panels arrive pre-cut and pre-drilled. No welding, bolted connections throughout. A small crew with hand tools, and most buyers assemble their own buildings. The reason geometry allows it. The arch is its own load path, so there is no frame to erect and no modules to join. You are not saving time. You are trading time for tens of thousands of dollars. And here is the symmetry I promised to keep honest. Modular hides 30 to 50% of its cost beyond the factory, quote. The arch hides 25 to 30% beyond the kit price end walls, base connectors, spray foam, doors. Neither sticker is the truth. Both truths are on this table. Two rules broken, but the third is the one that changes what you own. First, stand inside both products, because they do not feel the same at all. Step under a 30-foot arch, and the ceiling lifts to around 15 feet at its peak. Because it curves rather than spanning flat, the volume reads far larger than 1,200 square feet, should the space feels open in a way the floor plan cannot capture. Step into a factory module, and the experience is the opposite kind of engineered. The ceiling is flat and standard. The rooms arrive pre-decided, their walls landing where the module seams fall, because the box had to survive a highway to reach you. What you gain in finish, you give up in freedom. Inside the arch, there is no interior structure at all. No load-bearing walls, nothing dictating where a room goes. The floor plan is yours to draw. And this is the part that matters over a lifetime. Redrawing it a decade later is a drywall job, not a demolition. A module's walls are more permanent than the arches, which is a sentence almost nobody expects. The layout falls into place naturally. The kitchen sits along a flat end wall where water, gas, and vent lines run clean on a vertical surface instead of fighting the curve. The bedrooms sit behind knee walls, framed 12 to 18 inches inside the steel skin, which gives you flat drywall, standard outlets, and normal doors, while the curved ceiling picks up overhead and spans the full width. The finished result reads as a converted loft, not a metal shed. The curve overhead does work. A flat ceiling simply cannot. One honest aside, that same curve takes floor space near the edges, and that number comes back later in the video. Now the third rule, the one about ownership. Here is Prefab's quietest rule, and its most expensive. What you pay for the cheap end of Prefab, you do not fully own. A manufactured home placed on a non-permanent foundation is classified as personal property, not real estate. Legally, it sits closer to a vehicle than to a house, which means it is financed on a chattel loan at 7.5 to 10% or higher, not a 30-year mortgage, and, like a vehicle, it depreciates. You can pay it off and watch it be worth less than you paid. Modular escapes that trap. Set on a permanent foundation and built to local code, a modular home is legally indistinguishable from a site-built house. It gets mortgage rates and it appreciates. But look at the price of that escape. Around $240,000 before land. Permanence, in the prefab world, is something you buy back at roughly double the cost. So the unwritten rule is this. The cheap end depreciates. The permanent end costs double. Pick one. The arch refuses the choice. Bolted to a permanent frost-depth foundation on land you own, a finished Quonset Barndominium is real property. It appreciates. It deeds like a house at a finished price that lands beneath the average manufactured home. That is the rule breaking in a single sentence. Permanence at the price point where prefab has only ever sold depreciation. Now the asterisk, because this channel does not sell sentences it cannot defend. Real property on paper is not the same as an easy mortgage in practice. Many conventional lenders hesitate at steel arch homes, and appraisers struggle to find comparable sales nearby. In the real world, buyers reach for construction loans, credit unions, or phased cash. The classification is genuinely better. The lending is genuinely harder. Both are true, and anyone who tells you only the first half is selling you something. Which brings us to what the factory does genuinely better. Start with what modular wins, because it wins something real. A modular home arrives roughly 90% complete, plumbed, wired, finished, sometimes with the countertops already in. From order to move-in can be a matter of weeks. The arch arrives 0% complete. It is a stack of steel on a pallet, and every hour between that pallet and a finished home is yours to spend or a contractor's to bill. Time and labor are the true currency of the savings, and if you do not have either, the arch's number is not your number. That is the honest core of the whole comparison. Now the arch's own list. In the open. Insulation is non-negotiable. Curved steel will not accept bad insulation. The geometry refuses it. Closed cell spray foam, full encapsulation, is the only real option, and skipping it invites condensation, energy loss, and mold inside the cavity within a few years. The space tax is real. Full radius models surrender roughly 25 to 30% of the floor near the curved edges. You buy it back with knee walls at interior finish prices, or you pay more up front for a straight-walled model. Permitting can fight you. Many residential zones carry roof pitch or aesthetic conformity rules. An arch fails on paper, so your first call is the county, and a variance costs months. The lending wall from a moment ago stands, and the exterior is what it is. If the shape is a deal breaker, no number changes it. One rule ties it together. Budget the finished number, never the kit number. One page. The claim was that this building is changing prefab living. Here is exactly how much of that survives the evidence. It changed prefab living once already, and that part is not marketing, it is documented. In 1946, when a generation came home to no housing, this steel arch sheltered them by the hundreds of thousands on campuses and in veteran villages when nothing else could be built fast enough. It was the original prefab home before the word had an industry attached to it. It is changing prefab living again now by breaking the 3 rules that industry built. It ships on 2 pallets instead of an oversized flatbed and a crane. It costs less money rather than merely saving time. And it delivers permanent, appreciating real property at the exact price point where prefab has always sold depreciating personal property. 3 rules, all broken by one 80-year-old shape. Here is the verdict, and I want the wording exact. Modular sells you completeness. The arch sells you ownership per dollar. And you pay the difference between those 2 things in your own labor. Neither one is wrong. They are different purchases wearing the same word, and the entire decision comes down to which one you are honestly making. The arches that house the GI Bill generation were stamped temporary. Many of them are still standing. The design has already outlived every prediction anyone made about it. 2 answers in the comments, and be specific. First, finished by a factory or finished by you? Be honest about which one you are actually buying, because that answer is your whole budget. Second, which rule broke first for you, the delivery math, the price gap, or the ownership split? I read every comment, and I answer build questions personally. We cover alternative builds every week here. Real costs, real timelines. What works and what does not. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you on the next build.